The vast emptiness of space shimmered as a fleet of colossal ships emerged from hyperspace, their sleek metallic hulls glowing faintly against the dark backdrop. Each vessel was a marvel of alien engineering, built for one purpose: domination. The Galactic Empire's most advanced fleet had arrived on the outskirts of the solar system. Unseen by the human eye, their sensors locked onto Earth's position, and a silent wave of dread swept through the command centers scattered across the blue planet. Earth's satellites were the first to detect them. At first, it seemed like a minor blip, a glitch in the system. But as the readings grew stronger, alarms blared in Earth's defense stations. The fleet wasn't just passing by. It was heading straight for the heart of the solar system. Within minutes, emergency channels were flooded with chatter. Military leaders, scientists, and politicians scrambled to understand the threat bearing down on them. In an underground command bunker hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Aria Kane stood before a holographic display of the enemy fleet. Her face, sharp and weathered from years of service, betrayed no fear. Around her, officers exchanged nervous glances as they studied the alien ships. The fleet was massive, with a mothership at its center that dwarfed any vessel humanity had ever built. It was clear Earth's modest orbital defenses stood no chance. A chilling message soon arrived, transmitted in perfect English. Inhabitants of Earth, you are deemed unworthy. Surrender your planet and serve the Galactic Empire, or be destroyed. You have one Earth day to comply. The words echoed in the bunker, leaving a suffocating silence in their wake. The room felt heavier, as if the weight of the entire planet's fate pressed down on them. Finally, General Kane spoke, her voice calm yet commanding. They think we're weak. They think we'll bow, but they have no idea what we're capable of. Across the globe, news of the alien ultimatum spread like wildfire. Panic gripped the streets as people looked to the skies, imagining an invasion that could arrive at any moment. Families huddled together, uncertain if they'd live to see another sunrise. But amidst the chaos, a plan was quietly set into motion. Far from the public eye, in a classified facility buried within the Kuiper Belt, humanity's greatest secret was stirring to life. The Dreadnought Nemesis, a technological marvel decades ahead of its time, had been built in absolute secrecy, cloaked in an experimental field that rendered it invisible to both sight and sensors. The Nemesis was humanity's ace in the hole. Its creation had been a gamble, a desperate attempt to level the playing field in the face of a galactic threat that humanity had long feared would come. The ship's massive frame hummed as its systems came online. Advanced AI algorithms calculated attack strategies, while engineers on board double-checked the ship's experimental weaponry. Captain Elias Grant, the man chosen to command the Nemesis, stood on the bridge, his jaw set in determination. "They've come to destroy us," he said to his crew, his voice firm but quiet. "But they don't know we've been waiting for this day." As the alien fleet advanced, their smaller ships began to fan out, scanning for human defenses. On Mars, a mining outpost was the first to be obliterated by a precise orbital strike. Europa and Titan followed, their colonies reduced to ash and debris. The Empire was making an example of humanity's reach beyond Earth, showing them the futility of resistance. In the bunker, General Kane watched the destruction unfold on the display. Her heart ached for the lives lost, but her resolve hardened. She turned to her communications officer. "Send the signal. It's time." On the Nemesis, Captain Grant received the message. "Activate cloaking field," he ordered. The ship disappeared from all known detection methods, a phantom lurking in the cold expanse of the Kuiper Belt. The crew prepared for battle, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They knew the odds. They were one ship against an empire. But they also knew this wasn't just about survival. This was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. The alien fleet continued its approach, unaware of the shadow stalking them. As their scout ships reached the asteroid belt, the Nemesis struck. With a sudden burst of light, One of the Empire's ships exploded, its debris scattering into space. The remaining scouts scrambled, their sensors unable to locate the attacker. In the bunker, cheers erupted as the first images of the ambush came through. But General Kane raised a hand, silencing the room. "This is only the beginning," she said. "We're not out of this yet." Back on the Nemesis, Captain Grant gave his next command. "Reposition. Hit the next target before they regroup." The ship moved like a predator, striking swiftly and vanishing before the enemy could retaliate. Each attack sent ripples of confusion through the alien fleet. For the first time, the Galactic Empire, accustomed to absolute dominance, found itself at a disadvantage. But the Empire was far from defeated. On the bridge of the mothership Dominion, Supreme Commander Thalax watched the chaos with cold, calculating eyes. His voice, deep and resonant, carried across the command deck. "This is no ordinary prey. They've hidden their strength well, but it won't save them." As the first wave of the battle unfolded, Earth's fate hung in the balance. The Nemesis was humanity's only hope, a lone warrior against a seemingly invincible foe. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the survival of not just a planet, but a species. And as the silent Dreadnought stalked its prey, one thing became clear. The Galactic Empire was about to learn what it meant to challenge humanity. The alien fleet surged forward with an air of unshakable confidence, its sleek ships cutting through the void of space with precision. The Galactic Empire had conquered countless worlds, their enemies crumbling before their advanced technology and sheer firepower. Earth, with its fledgling space colonies and limited resources, was no different in their eyes. The fleet's vanguard, a group of heavily armed cruisers, broke off to secure the outer edges of the solar system, ensuring no resistance could form. Their mothership, Dominion, loomed behind them like a god of war, its size so immense that it cast shadows on nearby celestial bodies. On Earth, humanity's leaders faced the grim reality of their situation. In an emergency broadcast, President Eleanor Hayes addressed the world. Her voice was steady, but the strain was evident. "People of Earth, this is a moment that will define us. We face a force unlike any we have ever known, but we are not without hope. Stay strong and trust in the bravery of those who stand to protect us." Despite her words, fear gripped the planet. Cities were eerily quiet, with people glued to their screens, watching live feeds of the alien fleet's advance. In space, the remaining Martian colony sent a desperate message for reinforcements as alien ships descended upon it. The orbital defense platforms stationed above Mars unleashed their limited firepower, their missiles streaking through the void. They struck the alien vessels, but the damage was superficial. Moments later, the aliens retaliated, and the colony was wiped out in a fiery explosion visible from the planet's surface. In the underground bunker, General Area Kane watched the live feed with clenched fists. She turned to her tactical officer, her voice sharp and unwavering. "How long until Nemesis is in position?" The officer glanced at his screen. 5 minutes, ma'am. But the fleet is moving fast. We'll need to act immediately." Far beyond the reach of Earth's crumbling defenses, Nemesis floated in silence, hidden within a cluster of icy Kuiper Belt objects. The massive Dreadnought was a marvel of human ingenuity, its matte black hull absorbing light and radar signals alike. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Grant studied the enemy fleet's movements on his tactical display. His crew worked in tense silence, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their consoles. "Time to put her to the test," Grant said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Target the lead cruiser. Let's see how they handle a little surprise." The Nemesis powered up its railgun, the energy buildup contained within its magnetic coils creating a low hum that resonated through the ship. The weapon fired, sending a hyper-dense projectile hurtling through space at incredible speed. It struck the alien cruiser dead center, tearing through its hull and igniting its core in a fiery explosion. The rest of the vanguard scattered, their tight formation breaking apart as they searched for the source of the attack. On the bridge of the mothership Dominion, Supreme Commander Thalax narrowed his eyes as the reports came in. "What just happened?" he demanded, his voice cold and calculated. One of his officers replied nervously, "A ship, sir. Unknown origin. We're unable to detect it." Thalax's expression darkened. "So, the humans have a trick up their sleeve. No matter. Locate it and eliminate it." Back on the Nemesis, cheers erupted as the crew watched the cruiser's destruction on their screens. But Captain Grant's face remained serious. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "They'll adapt quickly. We need to stay one step ahead." Grant ordered the ship to reposition, its cloaking field concealing it once more as it silently moved through the battlefield. The alien fleet's remaining scouts began to converge on the area where the attack had originated, their sensors scanning frantically. The Nemesis struck again, this time taking out two smaller ships with a barrage of precision missiles. Debris scattered through space as the alien fleet struggled to regroup. The Galactic Empire's response was swift. Advanced drones deployed from the Dominion, their sleek frames designed for rapid pursuit and close-quarters combat. They swarmed the area, firing indiscriminately in an attempt to flush out the attacker. Inside the Nemesis, the crew braced as the ship's shields absorbed the onslaught. "Hold steady," Grant commanded. "Bring the plasma turrets online and take them out." The ship's automated turrets whirred to life, tracking the drones with uncanny accuracy. One by one, the drones exploded, their attacks proving futile against the Nemesis's superior firepower. Despite the success, the battle was taking its toll. Each maneuver drained the ship's energy reserves, and the cloaking field could only hold for so long under such intense pressure. In the bunker, General Kane monitored the situation with growing concern. The Nemesis was performing admirably, but it was clear the alien fleet's sheer numbers would eventually overwhelm it. "We need a new strategy," she muttered, her mind racing. "We can't win this by brute force alone." As the Nemesis continued its guerrilla tactics, the alien fleet began to adapt. Using advanced algorithms, they triangulated the ship's likely positions after each attack. Their heavy cruisers fired beams of concentrated energy, sweeping across space in an attempt to catch the cloaked vessel. On board the Nemesis, alarms blared as one of the beams grazed the ship's hull, causing a shudder that rippled through the deck. "We've been tagged," an officer called out. Grant gritted his teeth. "Divert power to engines and get us out of their range. Now." The ship lurched forward, its engines roaring to life as it dodged the incoming fire. Despite the close call, the crew remained focused, their training and determination driving them forward. Meanwhile, on the Dominion, Thalax observed the battle with a mix of frustration and intrigue. "Impressive," he admitted begrudgingly. "These humans are more resourceful than I anticipated, but they are still outmatched." Thalax ordered his fleet to tighten their formation, using their superior coordination to form an impenetrable wall around the mothership. "They may be clever, but we have the numbers. Let them exhaust themselves." As the alien fleet regrouped, the Nemesis temporarily withdrew, retreating to a safe distance to recalibrate and assess the situation. On the bridge, Grant addressed his crew. "We've dealt them a blow, but this is far from over. They're adapting, and so must we. Prepare for the next phase. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The crew nodded, their resolve unshaken despite the odds. For the first time in human history, they were fighting not just for their own survival, but for the survival of an entire species. The Nemesis was their spear, and they were determined to strike true. As the ship powered up for its next move, Earth watched anxiously, its people united in hope and fear. The first encounter was over, but the battle for humanity's future had only just begun. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity, and their initial losses stung. On board the massive mothership Dominion, Supreme Commander Thalax stood in the center of the command deck, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the battlefield. Reports of their lost ships scrolled past him, accompanied by frustrated murmurs from his officers. A predator at heart, Thalax did not rage or panic. Instead, he studied the situation with icy precision. The humans had proven they were not as primitive as the Empire believed. They had a weapon, a ship powerful enough to destroy their cruisers and evade their sensors. It was impressive, but not invincible. "Activate Phase 2, Thalax ordered, his voice low but carrying an edge that silenced the command deck. "I want their defenses dismantled and their spirit crushed. Begin the deployment of the swarm." Deep within the Dominion, hundreds of drone fighters were launched from cavernous hangars, spilling into the void like a tidal wave of death. These drones were not ordinary weapons. They were advanced autonomous killing machines, designed to overwhelm their targets through sheer numbers and relentless pursuit. They spread out in perfect formations, their programming calculating every possible trajectory the cloaked human ship could take. They would find the Nemesis, and when they did, there would be no escape. On the Nemesis, Captain Grant watched the incoming swarm on the tactical display. The red blips multiplied rapidly, forming an ominous cloud of danger around the alien fleet. His crew shifted uneasily, the weight of the moment settling over them. They had succeeded in their initial strikes, but now the full might of the Empire was bearing down on them. "We're out of time to strategize," Grant said, breaking the tense silence. His voice was calm but firm, a steadying force for the crew. "They're coming for us with everything they've got. If we stay here, we're sitting ducks." General Kane's voice crackled through the communications channel from Earth. "Captain, we need you to draw them away from the planet. If those drones reach Earth's orbit, our defenses won't hold for more than a few minutes." Grant nodded grimly. He turned to his crew. "You heard the General. This isn't just about us. It's about protecting everyone down there. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We'll lead them on a chase they'll never forget." The Nemesis powered up, its cloaking field shimmering faintly before it vanished completely. The massive Dreadnought began a calculated retreat, moving deeper into the asteroid belt. The drones reacted instantly, shifting their formation to pursue. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the Nemesis weaving through the treacherous field of floating debris, while the drones closed in relentlessly. The ship's engines roared as it executed sharp turns and sudden bursts of speed, dodging both the asteroids and the incoming fire from the drones. Inside, the crew braced against the force of the maneuvers, their hands flying over controls as they fought to stay ahead. The Nemesis's plasma turrets fired in bursts, destroying clusters of drones, but for every one they took down, more seemed to appear. Amidst the chaos, Lieutenant Ethan Voss, a young and eager officer, worked tirelessly at his station. His eyes darted between the screens, tracking enemy positions and recalculating the ship's trajectory. He had joined the mission full of optimism and determination, but now, faced with the unrelenting enemy, doubt began to creep into his mind. "Captain, the drones are adapting to our movements," Voss reported, his voice tight with tension. "They're predicting our course and cutting off our escape routes." Grant frowned, his mind racing for a solution. He knew Voss was right. The drones were becoming smarter with each passing moment, their programming learning from the Nemesis maneuvers. It was only a matter of time before they cornered the ship. As the battle raged on, the crew's resolve was tested further. One of the drones managed to breach the outer defenses, striking the ship's hull with a precision laser. The impact caused the ship to shudder violently, throwing several crew members off their feet. Alarms blared, and sparks flew from damaged consoles. "Report," Grant barked. "Minor breach on Deck 3, an officer replied. "No critical systems compromised, but we can't take many more hits like that." Grant's jaw tightened. They needed to turn the tide of the battle, and fast. He turned to Voss. "Lieutenant, can we use the asteroids to our advantage?" Voss hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If we can lure the drones into the denser parts of the belt, their numbers could work against them. They'll have less room to maneuver, and their programming won't handle the collisions well. Then let's make it happen, Grant said. Helm, take us into the densest cluster you can find. And someone get those plasma turrets firing at full capacity. The Nemesis dove deeper into the asteroid belt, its massive frame moving with surprising agility. The drones followed, their pursuit unwavering. As the ship weaved through the dense field of rocks and debris, the drones began to falter. Some collided with the asteroids, their programming unable to account for the unpredictable movements of the floating objects. Others were picked off by the ship's turrets, their sleek forms exploding in bursts of light. But the victory came at a cost. The strain of the intense maneuvers took its toll on the Nemesis, its engines overheating and its shields weakening. Inside, the crew worked feverishly to keep the ship operational. Sweat dripped from their brows as they pushed themselves to their limits. In the midst of the chaos, tragedy struck. Captain Bonner, a veteran pilot leading the ship's fighter wing, made a fateful decision. His squadron had been deployed to provide cover for the Nemesis, but the overwhelming number of drones threatened to overwhelm them. Bonner knew there was only one way to buy the ship enough time to escape. All units, fall back to the Nemesis, Bonner ordered over the comms. I'll draw their fire. Captain, no. One of his pilots protested. That's an order, Bonner snapped. Get back to the ship and protect her. Humanity's counting on us. Bonner's fighter broke formation, diving straight into the heart of the drone swarm. He fired every missile and laser at his disposal, taking out dozens of drones in a final act of defiance. The drones swarmed him in response, their combined firepower overwhelming his small craft. His fighter exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking several more drones with it. On the bridge of the Nemesis, the crew watched the sacrifice in stunned silence. Voss clenched his fists, his heart heavy with guilt. Bonner had been more than a captain to him. He had been a mentor, someone who believed in his potential. The loss was a blow to everyone, but it also reignited their determination. Grant spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Bonner gave his life for us to keep fighting. Let's make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Engage the next phase of the plan. We're not done yet. As the Nemesis powered forward, its crew carried the weight of Bonner's sacrifice with them. The battle was far from over, but they were more determined than ever to ensure that humanity would not fall. The Galactic Empire had struck back with brutal force, but the spirit of Earth's defenders remained unbroken. The aftermath of Captain Bonner's sacrifice left the crew of the Nemesis both mournful and determined. The alien drones had been thinned out, their overwhelming numbers now manageable, but the battle was far from over. Captain Grant stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as the remaining drones continued their relentless pursuit. The Dominion loomed in the distance, a silent reminder of the Galactic Empire's strength. Status report, Grant said, his voice steady but strained. Shields are at 40%, replied Lieutenant Voss, still shaken from Bonner's loss. Engines are holding, but we're running hot. We'll need time to cool down before pushing them further. And the drones? Grant asked. We've managed to eliminate about 70% of them, said Tactical Officer Reyes. But the rest are regrouping. They're adapting again. It's like they're learning from our every move. Grant frowned, leaning over the tactical display. They're not just adapting. They're being directed. Someone's controlling them. The realization sent a chill through the bridge. The Galactic Empire's technology was advanced, but for their drones to act with such coordinated precision, there had to be more to the equation. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the unspoken question lingering in the air. What were they up against? General Kane's voice came through the comms, her tone urgent. Captain, we've detected unusual activity near Jupiter. Long-range sensors are picking up a faint energy signature, something massive. It's cloaked, but the readings are similar to the Nemesis. Whatever it is, it's not one of ours. Grant's eyes narrowed. Another cloaked ship. That's no coincidence. Could it be a command vessel for the drones? The Nemesis turned its attention to the alien vessel's core, dodging enemy fire as it lined up the shot. The crew held their breath as Rice fired the railgun, sending a hyper-dense projectile hurtling toward the target. The shot struck true, piercing the core and triggering a massive explosion that engulfed the alien ship. Cheers erupted on the bridge as the alien vessel disintegrated, its fighters scattering without direction. But the victory was bittersweet. The Nemesis had taken heavy damage, and the battle was far from over. The Dominion still loomed in the distance, its presence a reminder of the Galactic Empire's unyielding power. Grant stood at the center of the bridge, his resolve unshaken. They had uncovered the Empire's hidden threat and destroyed it, but the war was far from over. As the Nemesis limped away from the wreckage, the crew prepared for the next battle, knowing that their fight for humanity's survival was only just beginning. The destruction of the cloaked alien vessel brought a brief moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The Nemesis floated in space, battered and bruised. Fires had been extinguished, and temporary repairs were underway, but the ship was far from battle-ready. Despite this, Captain Grant and his crew had no choice but to push forward. The Dominion, the Empire's flagship, loomed in the distance like a harbinger of doom, its weapons charging in preparation for an all-out assault on Earth. Inside the command deck, tension was palpable. Every officer was working at their station with laser focus, their movements sharp and deliberate. Grant stood in the center, his face a mask of determination despite the dire circumstances. The odds were against them, but there was no room for fear or hesitation. Humanity's survival depended on their next move. "Status report," Grant barked. Reyes scanned the tactical readout. "We've lost 60% of our firepower, Captain. Shields are offline, and the hull's integrity won't hold if we take another direct hit." Voss, still manning the scanners, added, "The Dominion is powering its main weapon. At this rate, they'll be in range to target Earth in less than 10 minutes. The crew fell silent for a moment, the weight of those words hanging heavy in the air. Grant broke the silence with a sharp command. "We're not going to let that happen. Reyes, get me firing solutions for their critical systems. Voss, focus on identifying weak points in their defenses, and someone patch me through to General Kane." The comm channel crackled to life, and Kane's voice came through, tense but resolute. "Captain, what's your status?" "Not great," Grant admitted. "The ship's barely holding together, and we're running out of time. But we've uncovered one last chance. If we can get close enough to the Dominion, we might be able to use the Nemesis' remaining weapon systems to overload their core. It's risky, but it's all we've got." Kane hesitated, then replied, "If you fail." "We won't," Grant interrupted. "We have to succeed. There's no alternative." Kane's voice softened. "Understood. We're counting on you, Captain. Good luck." The comm channel closed, and Grant turned back to his crew. "You heard the General. This is it. Prepare for a direct assault. Our objective is to stop the Dominion at all costs." The crew moved with purpose, despite the fear and exhaustion that weighed on them. They had already lost so much: friends, comrades, and their sense of safety. But they knew the stakes. Earth was counting on them, and they would not let their people down. The Nemesis powered forward, its engines roaring as it pushed toward the Dominion. The flagship responded immediately, its weapon systems locking onto the approaching Dreadnought. Bright streaks of energy lit up the void as the Dominion unleashed a devastating barrage. The Nemesis weaved through the onslaught, its damaged frame groaning under the strain. Inside the ship, the crew worked frantically to keep the systems online. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. Voss shouted over the chaos, "Captain, their shields are impenetrable from this distance. We need to get closer." Grant nodded. "Helm, bring us within firing range, and prepare the plasma cannons. Reyes, target their shield generators. If we can take them out, we might stand a chance." The Nemesis surged forward, closing the gap between itself and the Dominion. The closer they got, the more intense the enemy's fire became. Explosions rocked the ship, and entire sections were sealed off as the crew fought to contain the damage. Despite the overwhelming odds, they pressed on, their determination unshaken. Firing plasma cannons. Reyes called out, her hands flying over the controls. The ship's remaining weapons unleashed a concentrated burst of energy, striking the Dominion's shields. The impact caused a ripple effect, and for a brief moment, the shields flickered. Voss's eyes lit up. That's it. Their shields are destabilizing. Another hit like that could bring them down. Grant wasted no time. Rise, fire again. All power to the cannons. The Nemesis fired another salvo, and this time, the Dominion's shields collapsed entirely. The crew erupted into cheers, but Grant quickly brought them back to focus. Don't celebrate yet. We're not done. Target their weapons systems and engines. We need to cripple them before they can retaliate. The Nemesis fired on the Dominion's weapon arrays, taking out several of their primary cannons. But the flagship was far from defeated. It returned fire with a vengeance, striking the Nemesis with a blast that sent the ship spiraling. Inside, the crew held on for dear life as the ship stabilized. We're losing power, Voss shouted. Engines are failing, and we've got fires on multiple decks. Grant clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were out of options. The Nemesis couldn't sustain this fight any longer. But then, an idea struck him, a desperate, last-ditch plan. We're going to ram them, Grant said, his voice calm but firm. The crew froze, shocked by the order. Rise was the first to speak. Captain, if we do that. I know, Grant interrupted, but it's the only way. If we can overload their core, the resulting explosion will destroy the Dominion and save Earth. Prepare for impact. The crew exchanged grim looks, then nodded. They understood the sacrifice they were about to make, and they accepted it without hesitation. They had come this far, and they would see it through to the end. The Nemesis surged forward one final time, its engines roaring with everything they had left. The Dominion fired desperately, but the Dreadnought pressed on, unstoppable in its determination. As the distance closed, Grant addressed his crew one last time. It's been an honor serving with all of you, he said, his voice filled with both pride and sorrow. Let's finish this. The Nemesis collided with the Dominion in a blinding explosion of light and energy. The impact sent shockwaves through space, and the Dominion's core detonated in a chain reaction. The massive flagship was consumed in flames, its destruction lighting up the darkness like a second sun. On Earth, the people watched as the threat was eliminated, their cheers echoing across the planet. The Nemesis and its crew had made the ultimate sacrifice, but their bravery had saved humanity from annihilation. Though the loss was great, their legacy would live on as a reminder of the indomitable spirit of humankind. And as the dust settled, the galaxy would remember the day Earth's defenders stood against the might of an empire and proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's hope could never be extinguished. The blinding explosion from the destruction of the Dominion lit up the void of space, a fiery testament to the courage of the crew of the Nemesis. From the surface of Earth, billions of eyes watched the spectacle unfold through live transmissions, holding their breath in collective anticipation. The flagship of the Galactic Empire, the seemingly invincible titan that had symbolized dominance and fear, was no more. Its debris scattered across the orbit of Earth, a reminder of the extraordinary sacrifice that had ensured humanity's survival. But as the cheers of victory erupted across the globe, the weight of loss began to settle in. On board the scattered Earth defense fleet, the silence was deafening. The Nemesis, the pride of humanity, was gone, and with it, the brave souls who had fought until the bitter end. Captain Grant, Lieutenant Voss, Reyes, and countless others had given their lives in the ultimate act of defiance against tyranny. In the command center back on Earth, General Kane stood motionless, her hand trembling as she stared at the final telemetry from the Nemesis. Her eyes burned with unused tears, her heart heavy with the knowledge that while victory had been achieved, it had come at an unimaginable cost. A young officer approached her, his voice tentative. "General, the Dominion is confirmed destroyed. The remaining enemy ships are retreating. We've won." Kane nodded slowly, her expression somber. "Have we? The galaxy will remember this day as a victory for humanity, but for us, it's a day of mourning. Notify the world. The Nemesis has fallen, but her crew will be remembered as heroes." The officer saluted and moved away to relay the message. Kane took a deep breath, composing herself. She knew she couldn't allow grief to cloud her judgment. Not yet. There was still work to be done. The retreating enemy ships needed to be monitored, the debris field analyzed, and Earth's defenses rebuilt. The Galactic Empire might have suffered a crippling blow, but this war was far from over. Still, for the first time in decades, there was hope. Across Earth, celebrations erupted despite the bittersweet news. People poured into the streets, waving flags, hugging strangers, and lighting up the night with fireworks. The defeat of the Dominion had shown humanity that they were capable of standing against even the most overwhelming of odds. It was a turning point, a moment that would be etched into history as the dawn of a new era. In the days that followed, the true scope of the Nemesis's sacrifice became clear. Messages of gratitude and grief flooded global networks as people shared stories of their loved ones who had served on the ship. Memorials were erected in every major city, and the names of the fallen were etched into walls of honor, their legacy preserved for generations to come. Among these memorials, the largest and most poignant was constructed in the heart of Geneva. A towering statue of Captain Grant stood at its center, his arm outstretched as if pointing toward a brighter future. Surrounding him were sculptures representing the crew, each one crafted with painstaking detail to capture their bravery and determination. At the base of the monument, an eternal flame burned, symbolizing the undying spirit of humanity. For General Kane, the days after the battle were a whirlwind of responsibilities. She worked tirelessly to rally the remaining fleet, repair the damage to Earth's defenses, and prepare for the possibility of another attack. But she also made time to honor the fallen. One evening, as the sun set over Geneva, she visited the memorial in solitude. She stood before the statue of Captain Grant, her hand resting on the cold metal. "You did it, Grant," she whispered. "You gave us a chance. We won't waste it." Kane wasn't alone for long. A small crowd had gathered, silently paying their respects. Among them were the families of the fallen crew members, their faces etched with both sorrow and pride. Kane turned to address them, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "They were the best of us," she said. "They fought for a future they would never see, and because of them, we have that future. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. It is our duty to ensure that the galaxy knows what humanity stands for, not fear or submission, but resilience and hope." Her words resonated deeply, and as she finished speaking, the crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't loud or boisterous but heartfelt, a collective acknowledgement of the bravery that had saved them all. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Nemesis were being recovered from the debris field. Among the twisted metal and shattered systems, a surprising discovery was made. A small escape pod, heavily damaged but still intact. Inside was a single survivor, barely clinging to life. It was Lieutenant Voss. Against all odds, he had managed to eject moments before the Nemesis's final collision with the Dominion. His survival became a beacon of hope, a symbol of humanity's tenacity. Voss was brought back to Earth and hailed as a hero. Though his injuries were severe, he recovered with time, and his first-hand account of the final battle inspired millions. He became a leading figure in the renewed effort to strengthen Earth's defenses, his experience invaluable in preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the months turned into years, humanity began to rebuild, not just its cities and fleets, but its place in the galaxy. The battle against the Empire had united the nations of Earth like never before, forging alliances that transcended borders and cultures. A new era of exploration and innovation was born, driven by the desire to ensure that humanity would never again face extinction. Earth's message to the galaxy was clear. They would not bow to tyranny. They would fight for their survival, their freedom, and their future. And as their ships ventured beyond their solar system, carrying the stories of the Nemesis and her crew, they found allies among other oppressed worlds. The Galactic Empire, once seen as an unstoppable force, now faced resistance on multiple fronts. But even as humanity looked to the stars, they never forgot the cost of their victory. The Nemesis remained a symbol of sacrifice and courage, her name spoken with reverence by those who understood the price of freedom. And as the eternal flame burned at her memorial, it served as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity's spirit could never be extinguished. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and it was one born not of conquest or domination, but of unity, resilience, and hope.